people. All right. Well, it is what it is. Good morning, Commissioners, and good morning to all those who are here at the fourth meeting of the Alabama Environmental Management Commission for fiscal year 2023. The Department utilizes many sources of information to analyze and optimize our performance. The Department undergoes dozens of federal, state, and internal operational, programmatic, and financial audits that can identify areas for improvement. At the February Commission meeting, I reported on the trends in various statewide environmental quality measures in the annual State of the Environment in Alabama report. At the October Commission meeting, you received a report on performance against our annual operating plan. On the federal side, there's a yearly review of performance against our EPA work plans. In today's report, as has been done for a number of years, we will focus on the latest We'll focus on the latest publicly available EPA-generated compliance and enforcement metrics that compare the Department's performance against the rest of the states in the nation. Today's report will also summarize the results of the State Review Framework Audit performed by EPA that is done every 3 years. And finally, I'll report on progress with the construction of the new field office and laboratory in Mobile. Analyzing the rates of compliance with permits and the rate of necessary enforcement actions for our regulated industries in Alabama compared to the rest of the nation is an important way we measure our performance. This EPA-provided analysis examines the air, NPDES, drinking water, and hazardous waste programs. The tool uses standard quantifiable metrics that allow for state-to-state comparisons and the development of national averages. As you may recall from years past, the format for reviewing each program's metrics is to look at the size of the universe of regulated facilities, then compare the rate of inspections, informal enforcement actions, and significant noncompliance to the rest of the nation. This format was chosen to highlight that our objective is for regulated facilities to comply with the requirements of environmental permits and regulations issued by the Department. By looking at non-compliance metrics, we are in effect looking at compliance. When we speak of compliance and enforcement, we are referring to compliance with permits developed by the Department in accord with carefully developed environmental standards and enforcement actions when conditions in those permits and regulations are not met. And now to the dashboard slides that analyze compliance with and enforcement of environmental permit requirements. To help identify the program that is the subject of the graph, we'll be using color code where blue is air, green is water, orange is drinking water, and brown is land. First, we'll look at the size of the regulated universe for each of the 4 program areas. In Alabama, 2 local air programs were grandfathered as standalone entities when the Clean Air Act became law in 1970. They operate independently of the ADEM state program, although ADEM does provide substantial technical and other assistance to them. Recent upgrades to the EPA database now allow us to analyze the activities of ADEM independent of the local program's activities. The universe of regulated air facilities under the ADEM program is down from 636 to 532 between 2013 and 2022, about a 16% drop. The decline is primarily the result of some major sources closing over the years and other facilities reducing their emissions to the point they are no longer in the universe of federally reportable facilities. Facilities reducing their emissions to the point that they are no longer reportable is in itself a very desirable environmental outcome. In the water media, you can see the number of regulated facilities has been generally steady at about 11,000. The slight decline in 2020 to 2021 is the result of fewer entities operating under one of our general permits. General permits cover such things as stormwater controls for construction, and construction activities are often cyclical. 2022 appears to show an uptick in construction activity. In drinking water, the universe has been very steady at around 580 facilities. However, in 2021, there was a decline to 574 due to the closing of several transient systems, which are those located at things like RV parks and state parks, and due to several water systems merging with one another. 574 is a relatively small number of drinking water systems. In the case of drinking water, a smaller number of facilities that are of larger size is beneficial because larger facilities have improved access to management and other resources. The universe of hazardous waste facilities steadily increased from about 5,100 in 2013 to nearly 5,600 in 2022. The more than 10% increase is attributable in large part to a national enforcement settlement agreement that caused pharmacies and other retail facilities selling pharmaceuticals to report as hazardous waste generators. Okay, next is inspections. As has been often repeated in my reports to you, the department relies on inspections as the most significant tool to obtain compliance with environmental permits and requirements in Alabama. Independent research supports this concept, as will upcoming data showing our results. The following graphs will show inspection rates for each of the four media. The different programs have different names for the inspection activities, such as full compliance evaluation, or facilities inspected, or site visits, or inspection coverage, and this is due to different terminology used in the various federal enabling statutes. The graphs will use the term inspection for all media. There will be one inspection graph for each media showing the inspection rate for all regulated facilities. A second inspection graph will show inspection rate for the largest regulated facilities in that media, except for drinking water. The large facilities are the ones that typically have the greatest potential for adverse impact on the environment and are therefore important to look at closely. Data on the inspection of the largest facilities for drinking water, for the drinking water media, is not broken out in reports submitted to EPA, so there will be no second inspection graph for drinking water. The blue bars represent the inspection rate of all facilities during the last 10 years for the department's AIR program. The dashed red line represents the average inspection rate for the nation. As you can see, Alabama continues to have an inspection rate that is nearly 4 times the national average, and with the exception of 2020, a COVID year, shows a fairly flat trend, slightly over 98%. Looking at just the largest regulated facilities in AIR, there's a similar pattern of inspections in recent years, with the exception of 2020, at or near 100%, which is again about 4 times the national average. The green bars for the water program consistently show an inspection rate for all facilities that is more than 2.5 times better than the national average, shown by the red dashed line. With the largest regulated facilities in water, the inspection rate is consistently higher than the national average. The orange bars for the drinking water program show an inspection rate for all regulated facilities that is typically about 3 times the national average, shown by the red dashed line. As noted a moment ago, drinking water data for large facilities only is not available. However, with an inspection rate of nearly 100% of all facilities, the largest systems are being inspected at a very high rate. Closing out inspections, the brown bars for the hazardous waste program show a rate for all inspections that is 2 to 3 times the national average. The treatment, storage, and disposal facilities, abbreviated TSD, and large quantity generators in hazardous waste, the inspection rate has been trending higher in recent years and is still above the national average in 2022. Both of the hazardous waste inspection graphs reflect the increased emphasis on inspections to address our higher than desired instances of significant non-compliance. The enforcement group of graphs highlights the second most important element after inspections in our strategy to achieve compliance. It's been our strategy to utilize education, including informal enforcement, to obtain a higher level of compliance. Research has shown that inspection and technical assistance, which is education, are the biggest contributors to compliance. Most violations are not intentional. They are many times the result of either not knowing what is required under the permits, accidents, or mistakes. Informal enforcement is one form of education that helps avoid those situations. Additionally, formal enforcement actions, especially those with penalties, typically require 5 to 10 times the resources of informal enforcement actions, so utilizing a higher percentage of informal actions uses resources more effectively. EPA data was used to create the following graph showing the relationship between informal and formal enforcement actions. As this AIR program graph, the blue columns represents the percentage of all environmental actions that are informal, and the dashed red line represents the average percentage for the nation. As you can see, ADEM has consistently had a higher rate of informal enforcement with a slight drop in 2022. The slowly rising national trend line seems to indicate the rest of the nation is seeing the benefits of increased informal enforcement. In the water program, the percentage of informal actions is again higher than the national average, represented by the red dashed line. Our trend line is essentially flat at around 95%. The rest of the nation is closing in on us at about 85%. Of course, some formal enforcement will always be required, so we're not likely to go beyond our 95% level. The informal enforcement trend in our drinking water program is flat and peaked out at a rate above the dashed red line, representing the national average that is increasing. Hazardous waste, like other ADEM programs, shows a high rate of informal enforcement that yields a high level of compliance. This program has employed a rate of informal enforcement that is similar to that of other ADEM programs and is on par with national averages. We'll continue to apply emphasis on informal enforcement and outreach to hazardous waste facilities to enhance the compliance rates in our hazardous waste program. This final group of dashboard slides will look at the rates of significant noncompliance, commonly referred to as SNCC. The different programs use terminology such as high priority violations or priority enforcement systems to describe this type of noncompliance. However, for the ease of presentation, we will use the term SNCC to identify all violations that are of a more serious nature and thus a cause for heightened concern. The objective of all environmental programs is to have a low non-compliance rate, which is synonymous with high compliance rate. This group of graphs is where we see if our strategy of high rates of inspections and informal enforcement is showing results. Beginning with air, the blue bars represent the percentage of inspections that result in a significant non-compliance, SNCC, finding for Alabama facilities, and the dashed red line represents the national average. SNCC rate for Alabama is currently about 2% and is typically less than 1/2 the national average. The water program has a SNC rate per inspections conducted that is exceptionally low. The rate is about 1/3 the national average and continues to trend favorable. At less than 1.5%, the drinking water program continues to have a SNC rate about 1/2 the national average, the red dashed line. The slight increase in 2022 is attributable to several systems that had a temporary issue with controlling disinfectant byproducts that occurs when disinfectants used to treat drinking water react with naturally occurring organic material during the distribution of the water. As you can see, the hazardous waste program is the one area where we are above the national average in the percentage of inspections showing the incidence of significant noncompliance, and we want to be below the national average. The hazardous waste program primarily focuses on the management of hazardous waste handling sites, the implementation of measures to prevent new hazardous waste material releases, and the remediation of past hazardous material releases. For decades, we have had no substantial new hazardous waste sites created in Alabama, and many legacy sites have been cleaned up. However, in the hazardous waste program, incidents of noncompliance classified as significant do occur. Incidents of significant noncompliance typically involve exceeding the maximum number of days hazardous waste can be stored at a location and/or repeated occurrences of minor violations such as poor record keeping or labeling. At 6.8%, this year's percentage rate shows a slight increase over the last year's 6.5%, and we are not where we want to be. At 6.8%, the 6.8% represents 10 facilities in significant noncompliance out of a universe of 148 large facilities inspected. Importantly, none of the SNCs in Alabama have been found to result in harm to human health or the environment. EPA is reviewing some indications that SNC reporting protocols are not consistent among states, which may skew the national comparisons. Nevertheless, Land Division efforts to reduce the hazardous waste SNC rate in the future will continue through stepped-up targeted education program, including video format instruction on the most common violations and how to avoid them. The program will also provide one-on-one training sessions with the treatment, storage, and disposal facilities, which are the largest hazardous waste handlers, as well as joint sessions with their downstream customers that represent the next largest handlers. We will continue to address all violations with appropriate enforcement action. Okay, to summarize, the number of regulated facilities in Alabama is generally steady with some variation by media. High inspection rates are being implemented across all programs. The department emphasizes informal enforcement, which is a form of education. Alabama has low rates of significant noncompliance compared to the rest of the nation in the air, water, and drinking water programs. An enhanced inspection and instruction program for facilities covered by the hazardous waste program is being implemented to reduce the rate of significant noncompliance. And overall, the department outperforms the rest of the nation in compliance and enforcement with long-term trends in key metrics that are generally favorable. These metrics are consistent with trends in non-statistical environmental quality measures over many years, highlighted in my periodic reports on state of the environment in Alabama. They are also consistent with EPA, regulated industry, and independent research groups' findings that Alabama is one of the top environmental performers in the nation. While the state overall has an enviable environmental record, there are occasionally serious environmental issues that can and do cause great concern in local communities. Typically, each year there are several. This year, significant concerns with a vegetative waste fire, the application of certain byproduct materials, and the per- and polyfluoroalkyl substances have been expressed by citizens. We address these in regulatory programs and enforcement actions and cover them in my reports to you or in news releases. In our efforts toward continuous improvement, the department analyzes its performance in many ways. One analysis is provided by EPA, the EPA State Review Framework audit performed approximately every 3 years. At each EPA region oversees audits of various operational matters such as completeness, accuracy, and timeliness of data, inspections, and enforcement activities for the states in its respective region. EPA Region 4 is comprised of 8 southeastern states: Alabama, Florida, Georgia, Kentucky, Mississippi, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Tennessee. Following spreadsheets will show the audit results for the 7 states that have completed the 4th round of the State Review Framework audits in Region 4. The color coding is green for meets requirements, yellow for needs attention, red for needs improvement, and white for no data. The air display shows 1 red entry, which is a needs improvement for Alabama in the data accuracy element. As you can see, 5 of the 7 states have adverse findings for this element. The data reviewed was from FY 2020, early in the COVID-19 pandemic, when remote work was just beginning and much data transcription was in transition. There is also some concern that a single data point reporting error results in a negative finding for an entire data set. This issue has now been addressed. All other entries are green, which is meets requirements. Tennessee is the only other state with only 1 element that was not green. As you can see from the white entries, Florida has not yet completed round 4. The water display shows Alabama as the only state with all green entries. The RCRA display shows Alabama, Mississippi, and South Carolina with all green entries. This EPA audit program is one of the many tools that we use to measure performance with the objective of continuously improving. The results speak for themselves. Next, we have a report on the status of construction on our Mobile field office and lab. Here's a view of the whole site. Mobile Bay and the Coast Guard Station are just out of view beyond the top of the photo, and you can see Broad Street at the bottom. The boat storage building at the rear of the site is complete. You can see the distinctive large curved wall at the front of the office area of the building, and a second smaller curved wall about halfway back on the right where the lab area will begin. The main building and lab foundations are complete. The building walls are complete. The roof trusses are almost complete. The metal panels to support the roof are being installed. Plumbing and electrical are stubbed in, and significant portions of the HVAC system are complete. You can also see the completed stormwater retention pond to the right. This next slide gives a little better view of the other side of the building. Note the completed curb and gutters around the site and parking areas. If you look closely, you can see the scaffolding along the back of the building to support the stucco application. It's pretty hard to see. Preparations are underway to install the rubber-modified asphalt made with recycled scrap tires in the drives and parking areas. Office furnishings have been ordered. The project is approximately 55% complete. Completion is scheduled for mid-summer. This final slide is the artist rendering of what the finished building will look like. That concludes today's report. I'll be pleased to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, that brings us to item 3, report from the commission chair, and I have no report. Moving on to item 4. Item 4 is consideration of the proposed amendments to ADEM Administrative Code Division 335-6, Volume 2, Water Quality Program Regulations, UST, Technical Standards, Correction Action Requirements, and Financial Responsibility for Owners and Operators of Underground Storage Tanks. Proposed revisions would provide an inflationary adjustment to the underground storage tank regulation fee. Thank you, Mr. Jenkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, Commissioners. I'm Stephen Cobb, Chief of the Land Division, and I'm here today to recommend that the Commission adopt amendments to the Department's Division 6, Chapter 15, Technical Standards, which are the corrective action requirements and financial responsibility for owners and operators of underground storage tanks. Revisions to Division 6, Chapter 15 are being proposed to update the underground storage tank registration fee. Section 41-1-11 of the Code of Alabama enables the Department to increase statutory fees based upon increases in the Consumer Price Index. This fee increase reflects these criteria. The proposed revisions were the subject of a public comment period, which ran from December 18th, 2022 to February 9th, 2023. A public hearing was held at the Department on February 9th. No oral comments were received during the hearing, and no written comments were received during the public comment period. So therefore, the Department requests that the Commission adopt the proposed changes to the Division 6, Chapter 15 regulations, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions? Do we have a motion regarding the adoption of the proposed amendments to the Water Quality Program regulations?
So moved.
Any discussion? Call for the question. All in favor of the motion of approving the proposed amendments, signify by raising your right hand. All right. Oop, that's right. Sign the one. Sorry, Mr. Cobb. I don't know why.
That's okay.
I knew it was Steve.
Not a problem.
I knew you. I don't know why I called you. All right, that brings us to item 5, which is a consideration of the proposed amendments to ADEM Administrative Code Division 335-14, Hazardous Waste Program Regulations, to adopt 2 newly codified and revised federal rules promulgated by EPA. The proposed amendments include modernizing ignitable liquids determinations and conforming changes to Canada-specific hazardous waste import, export, recovery, and disposal operations codes. Additional modifications are also made to make general clarifications and to maintain equivalency with federal regulations. Mr. Cobb, I got it right this time.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. And I'm also here today to recommend the Commission adopt amendments to the Department's Division 14 Hazardous Waste Program Regulations. These amendments propose changes to Chapters 1 through 9 and Chapter 11 of Division 14. As stated, the revisions to Division 14 are being proposed to adopt two newly codified and revised federal rules promulgated by EPA. The first of these federal rules was modernizing ignitable liquids determinations, and it updates the criteria for identifying ignitable hazardous waste and modernizes the test methods for making those identifications, many of which currently require the use of mercury thermometers. The second of these federal rules, conforming changes to Canada's specific hazardous waste import, export, recovery, and disposal operations codes, updates rules related to hazardous waste import, export operations between the United States and Canada. Additional modifications are also made to make general clarifications and to maintain equivalency with federal regulations. The proposed revisions to the Division 14 rules were the subject of a public comment period which ran from November 20th, 2022 to January 24th, 2023. A public hearing was held at the Department on January 24th. No oral comments were received during the hearing, and no written comments were received during the public comment period, so the Department requests that the Commission approve these changes.
Do I have a motion from the Commission regarding the proposed amendments to the hazardous waste program regulations?
I'd like to ask a question.
Sure.
In my correspondence with the Medical Association, the hazardous waste program is still sort of a hot topic. Could you comment on how that's being accommodated, please?
As far as hazardous waste in the medical waste arena,
Yeah, and needles in the doctor's office.
okay, those requirements are addressed under our Division 17 rules and regulations, and we are currently in the process of engaging with the medical community and the stakeholders to modernize those regulations. We anticipate coming before you at a future meeting with proposed changes to those.
All right, well, like I said, it's still kind of a hot topic, so
We understand, yes.
Go ahead, Mr. Chairman.
That's all right. Do I have a motion to adopt the proposed amendments to the hazardous waste program regulations?
Move to approve as presented.
All right. Chair calls for the question. All in favor of adopting the regulations signify by raising your right hand. Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Item 6 is other business. Anyone have any other business? That brings us to item 7, future meetings of the commission. The date of the next commission meeting is June 9th, 2023. Are any of the commissioners unavailable on that day? Great. All right, that brings us to the public comment period. We've had a request to make a presentation by Mr. John Witt from Elkmont, Alabama. At this time, I'll entertain a motion regarding approving, denying, or tabling the request to make a presentation.
Second.
Chair calls for the question. Any discussion? Chair calls for the question. All in favor regarding the motion signify by raising your right hand. Motion carries. Mr. Witt, come forward.
Gentlemen, not a violation of protocol, I'd like to use that Alabama map as a prop. Is it okay if we remove that and place it up here?
Sure.
Okay, thank you, sir. I don't want to break anything, so if somebody wants to help with it, you don't have to pay for it. I don't insult anyone's intelligence, but I do not have a map, and there's some map references I need to make in relation to quantitative data for population in North Alabama. Maybe this will work. Y'all see that?
Yeah.
Better.
Yeah. Just want to remind you to keep the presentation to 10
Yes, sir.
minutes. Thank you.
Chief Courtney, so you'll be able to keep track.
Yes, ma'am, thank you. Commission, gentlemen, board members, yes, all protocol having been established. I'd like to start off, so I don't waste any time, by addressing North Alabama is the fastest growing county, or excuse me, Limestone County is the fastest growing county in the state of Alabama. Some quantitative data for you. Per the latest Census Bureau statistics, Limestone County currently has 110,000 residents, up from 107,000 from last year, 3.3% for a third consecutive year, being the fastest growing county in the state. Neighboring Madison County has 403,000, up from 396, an increase of 7,000 residents. So Eastern Limestone and Western Madison County increased their population around 10,000 in 1 year. This doesn't even consider the Huntsville area, which is the largest city in the state now, Decatur, Morgan County, and as a list of most populated cities in the state, Huntsville's number one with 221,000. Again, not to insult anyone's intelligence, but the area I'm talking about, of course, my point. I'm from right there in North Alabama, population me, right? Elkmont, everybody knows where Elkmont is, right? No, you don't. It's like 300 people there. We're in the county. So we're in North Alabama. The Decatur, Madison, and Huntsville area is right here. So the combined area consists of around 850,000 people, which I'll get to in just a second. But what are the most populated cities in the state? Huntsville with 221,000. Montgomery second, Birmingham third, Mobile fourth, Tuscaloosa fifth, Hoover sixth, Auburn seventh, Dothan eighth, and Madison City ninth, and Decatur City 10th. So North Alabama, that pocket, that cluster, has 3 of the top 10 most populated cities in the state, with accompanying construction. We have multiple projects, both residential and business. So my first request from the commission is please consider more funding for North Alabama as proportional to the construction and growth in that part of the state. The number I just told you, it was 850,000, does not even include Morgan County. So we have close to 1 million people in that small cluster, like I was saying. So that's about a fifth of Alabama's population, and I would request 20% of ADEM's funding go toward that area because of the growth, because of the proportional population and construction. Because a lot of things are getting overlooked, and it's taking private citizens such as myself to start paying attention And it took me paying it, when I saw the pollution coming from the school site I'm about to talk about, into our family property that's been in there for our family for 70 years. My grandfather got it in 1947 after World War II. And when I went down there after the first significant storm event, I couldn't believe what I saw. I said, this can't be legal. But I'll come back to that. Limestone County is also unincorporated. Now, some may say it's a county issue, you need to be incorporated, you need to have more regulations for the county. I agree, but that'd also be like, and I apologize if this is an inappropriate example, but it'd be like if someone said, well, we don't need to help people with lung cancer because they shouldn't have been smoking, ain't no better than smoke. We don't do that, right? So yeah, there's some things we should do in Limestone County better, and the commission should do, and we're addressing that through different channels. But in the meantime, we need help. So again, I'd like to request more staffing and funding proportional to the rate of growth. And I would request that anyone in this room that has legislative contacts that I could utilize, I would be glad to approach our legislators for that. So having said this, I'd like to move on to the PowerPoint presentation, as Elkmont Elementary School is a case study. I'm assuming everyone can see the slides. So this is a presentation I made to the Alabama Elk River Development Agency that controls 1,400 acres of land formerly controlled by the Tennessee Valley Authority. It was turned over to AERDA years ago. Now, the mismanagement of that property is a separate conversation, but when you consider the fact they built the school on a very bad site topographically, that's an issue. So I presented this plan that was rejected by AERDA, and I just kind of to give you a real-world context of what's going on. Now let me add this. I know you guys y'all focused on 3M, got big issues, Mobile Bay, Birmingham, I get it. And it may not seem like a big deal to some folks, okay? But what's happening to us is these contractors are coming over from Huntsville, Madison, coming from out of state, and are building in our county, and the local population is at a loss as to what to do to how to deal with it. Okay, as far as the pollution, the growth, I mean, property values are a different topic. These big paying jobs that are coming in at Redstone, I'm at Redstone every day. I'm a Department of Defense guy. But I'm also my local resident. Been there my whole life. Folks can't afford property, locals can't. They're not really benefit. Apologize for the rabbit hole there. But I made this presentation because this property's been in our family for 70 years. Now again, you can see here the difference in the water, and one of the AERDA guys said, well, that's just muddy water. I said, well, you don't know what's in that water. I said, we need to monitor this. And this goes for several miles, and there's a protected 300-acre wetland less than a mile from the construction site. That's what makes it unique. Now, I'm not going to go over these terms in the construction. I did this with them. These are some of the contractors. I met with the architect back in the summer, and I told him, I said, you don't have a plan for your off-site drainage. He said, we just have to drain. Like, that's unacceptable. That's our property right there. They don't care. So topography, stormwater runoff has been the biggest problem. Sediment control, and like I said, we don't know what's in the water, and a lot of the reports point out the water quality and turbidity issues. This is what I want to focus on real quick. If y'all can see the map. All right, so what you have, and each one of these maps will get larger. Here's the school site. Here's our property. Outfall 1 drainage into the creek here. This is a spoil pile that's off-site. The AERDA allowed them to put there, and it's draining off in this community here, which is the Upmont Rural Village. There's 150 families there. Again, TVA established this in the 70s and 80s for rural occupancy. Drains off to this area, meets here, and there's your protected wetland. Okay? Not to mention the negative impact it's had on our livestock and fish and wildlife. Early on in the enforcement process, this was the outfall after they supposedly made the third change, the third improvement. They're very dismissive of those suggested improvements. This is a waterfall, a swimming area. I would like for the area to be classified as swimming as addition to fish and wildlife. And again, this goes on for miles. And if you're not back in the woods like I am, you don't know it. So immediate needs, you know, I did want to thank ADEM for their efforts. I know the Decatur office is doing about all they can, and I just wish they had more staffing to do it. All right, here's another enlarged picture of the property. Here's the 1,400 acres of AERDA, the formerly controlled by TVA, okay? Here's the Elk River, there's your protected wetland, and here's the job site, okay? and there's our property. Larger picture, you can kind of see it's closer. There's the Elk River community to the south. There's us to the north. Larger picture, there's my house, there's our property, my dad's property. This is all ARDA, state land, being polluted right now. Here's the school site. The problem is 13 acres drain off into one outfall. That's north, and that's our property. 13 acres here, and I apologize to the commission. I know y'all can't see what I'm pointing at right here, but with the pointer. But you see it catches right here, everything coming off that site, and that one outfall drains and out into our waterway and our creek, and that goes on for miles. It's just jettisoned out because of the elevation, the volume, and the ADEM staff has documented all this, the volume and velocity and the contents. Family property, businesses, there's us again, ARDA property, Rural Village residents, spoil pile off-site. Here's our creek, and this is the first time I saw it coming into our creek being polluted. Clean water, polluted water, and that's in more than one place. This is the presentation of the suggestion I wanted to do to ARDA. I wanted to mitigate between the school site and us. No, we're not going to do that. Okay, what's your plan? I don't have one. Here's the watershed and my point of my contact information. So having said all that, per section 335-6-6-17 3BI, or 1, I request a modification to the permit. The information not considered by the contractor or was ignored in terms of topography and the fact that the site borders what TVA originally classified as a 1,400-acre green space and rural community in addition to the site draining into a 300-acre wetland. I request an increase or change of site to a priority work site due to the uniqueness of the ARDA property and waterway. Increase frequency of monitoring and reporting to the contractor's lack of adherence to maintaining best management practices. I'd like to request also a higher classification of Davis Branch Creek. I would also like to delete .1 source at outfall 1, northwest of the project, and request this commission or a point of contact the Alabama Elk River Development Agency in order to get an explanation as to why it's being polluted. And again, per the director, inspections are the most effective means of mitigating this, per the data. And I wish we had more inspectors in North Alabama and the Decatur office to help the Madison, Huntsville, Limestone, Morgan County areas. Per the proportion of the population, again, being around 1 million in that small pocket. And if you look at your packet, I just have some extra information for you, the school site, some reports, and I know you have the slide deck. At this time, I'd like to entertain any questions, if per protocol, from the audience and the commission. And hopefully this is within the parameters of the commission's role. I know I didn't get into a lot of the official policy making, but I do wish that we did have a faster timeline for compliance in terms of legislation. Because right now, these guys have a 30-day window. In the meantime, they have not done anything to do BMPs on the northwest corner. It's like they're ignoring it. And the 30-day window it doesn't help the environment, doesn't help our water. So I would like this body to have more enforcement power. And I'd like for ADEM to have more funding from the legislature. And I'd be glad to help as any way as a private citizen I can to approach the legislature to do that as a non-member of the committee or ADEM. So, sir, you have a question?
On this notice of violation from December the 9th,
Yes, sir.
2022, is this a result of, did you file a complaint with ADEM to trigger that? Or?
Yes, sir. I'll tell you, I've got this on ADEM's radar back in June. And I met with the architect in Huntsville. How'd you get the printouts? I said, well, it's a public document. I said, we need to talk about this. If they had approached us prior to, it would have been an issue. But they just think I'm a old redneck, just don't know what I'm talking about, you know. And everything I've told them has been 100% accurate. It has happened. So yes, sir, to answer your question, it's a result of me filing several complaints, monitoring, sending documentation, and I have copious documentation of this. That is just not right. And I wouldn't see it if our property went on the back side of the site. Got the highway, the fence, can't get it through the fence. If you're not part of the contractors, well, back on the back, they would have never known from no fault of theirs if we didn't live back there. I hunt and trap in those woods, and I'm like, what in the world? When I saw it coming off, I'm like, oh no. Their whole plan was designed to just dump stuff all in that waterway. I said, this is not going to happen. So yes, sir, it's a long answer to a short question, but yes, sir.
Any other? Mr. Witt, thank you much for your presentation.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate your
Appreciate it.
time. And when the meeting's over, I'll be heading back to North Alabama because y'all's pollen down here is a little bit different. I can't quit coughing this morning. So. Thank you for your time, gentlemen. Ladies.
Thank you. All right. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor, raise your right hand. We are adjourned.